Hi, how you doing? In this one, we're going to ask ourselves a pretty awkward question. Is catch actually HEMA? This isn't going to be an easy question to answer, at least not if we look at it in an objective and logical way. My gut says no, it absolutely isn't, but I realise that that's at least part an emotional reaction and not necessarily something I've come to from following a systematic thought process. So let's try and do that. Just like every other time I've made a video looking at what is, let's face it, more of a philosophical question than a practical one, we're going to need to start by defining our terms. And that's not an easy thing to do. We'll start with catch wrestling. Catch wrestling is an abbreviated name for catch as catch can, sometimes referred to historically as catch hold wrestling. It's a system of unarmed combat that fights to a pin or a submission. It contains throws, takedowns, groundwork, escapes, reversals and submissions. It uses weight and pressure as a very deliberate weapon, and it uses pain to control and move your opponent. There are some things in it that you don't really find much in other systems, at least originally, like a huge variety of neck cranks and a bunch of positions known as rides, which are designed to wear your opponent down and make it easier to submit or pin them later. I think we're pretty safe so far. Where it starts to get a little trickier is when we start to look at origins and rules. It's safe to say that there's some debate about its origin. Go back 100 years and there was definitely more than one type of wrestling that was referred to as catch as catch can. Most people say that what we refer to nowadays as catch is descended from Lancashire wrestling, but there's definitely some evidence to suggest that at least at some time, to some people, catch as catch can and Lancashire wrestling were different things and existed at the same time. I don't think we're going to be able to resolve the uncertainties in this video, so let's just take all that at face value and say it's a modernised version of Lancashire wrestling. The rules are another issue. There are lots of different rules within modern catch. Some people allow strangles, some people don't. Some people pin for a second, some people pin for 3. We can probably just write that off. So what about HEMA? What's that? Well, that's an interesting question. It stands for Historical European Martial Art, and if that's as far as we go, then yeah, sure, catch is definitely part of the overall umbrella that is HEMA. But that isn't as far as we go, because there's definitely more to HEMA than the name implies. HEMA is, in reality, a movement rather than a group of systems. It's a collective term for those people and organisations that are seeking to recreate arts that have either died out or have evolved enough that the original art is no longer recognisable as the current version. So, recreating the classical pugilism of the 18th century using texts from the period, definitely HEMA. As is looking at medieval German wrestling from manuscripts like Fabian von Auswald's from the beginning of the 16th century. But what about things like World War II military combatives? Is that HEMA? What about Cornish wrestling? And more to the point, what about catch? I guess at this point in the video we need to ask ourselves why we're even looking to answer this question. If an art needs to have died out to be classed as HEMA, then catch did not die out. It held on by the skin of its teeth, thanks to people like Billy Robinson, Roy Wood, Tommy Hayes, Jack Mountford in the UK, people like Dick Cardinal, Billy Wicks and Judo Gene LaBelle in the US, and of course Karl Gotch in Japan. We still have a lineage of people doing and teaching the art that goes back through them to the American carnivals, to Billy Riley's gym in Wigan and beyond. But just like everything to do with catch, it's not quite that simple. It is a historic art. It is European in origin, and it is definitely a martial art. It came so close to dying out that it still might. If catch was a person, it'd be in hospital labelled as critical. Time for a tangent.
Oh, good grief.
Fight Camp is probably the biggest and longest running HEMA event in the UK. Every year people travel from all over the world to meet up, train together and compete. There are classes in a huge range of things, from medieval Italian longsword to military sabre, from poleaxe to dagger, from Victorian self-defence with walking sticks to Napoleonic military drill, and for about the last decade there's always been a class on catch wrestling. And not just because of me. I haven't been for several years, and the classes in catch are still going on. The fact is that you can learn catch from people who did it in their youth many decades ago. You can learn it from the people who've studied under them, and whether you like it or not, It's possible to study catch from period books written by people long since dead. And that sounds very much like HEMA to me. The obvious risk is that people who discover catch wrestling through HEMA and study period instructionals to learn will never really be particularly good at wrestling. I say this because that's exactly who I was. I discovered catch through old books on wrestling that I found and tried to understand. Then I realised people were still doing it for real and I made the jump. I was truly terrible. I've not really been particularly involved in the wider HEMA community for some time now, but I strongly suspect I'm not the only one who was doing catch and doing it really badly. The question we need to ask ourselves is, does that even matter? And of course the answer is both no, not really, and also yes, very much. I genuinely believe it doesn't matter if you aren't very good at catch. It's a competitive art, and some people will be better than others. People that aren't very good will likely get better, and even if they don't, does that really matter? What does matter is that it's trained properly. Catch is hard work, it's draining, it's exhausting, and when things aren't going your way, it can be crushing, both physically and emotionally. Catch needs to be trained against full resistance at full power, with other people doing the same. It needs to be a brutal physical art. What we can't let it become is an academic exercise. We can't let techniques be walked through and then left. At best, we end up with an English Aikido. At worst, a global laughingstock. I don't think catch is part of HEMA. But I do think that the two are definitely intertwined. And I think that presents us with both an opportunity and a risk. The opportunity is that we can open our arms to the people within the HEMA community currently interested in and experimenting with catch. We can welcome them into what we do, help them see the effectiveness in the art, and show them the joy that can be found in training it properly. Or we can turn away from them and leave them to keep playing in isolation. And that leaves us with the very real risk that when catch is absorbed completely into generic no-gi grappling, all that's left are the academic types walking through techniques for the amusement of finding something historically entertaining. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that if that's what people want to do. But I, for one, think it would be really sad if that was all we had left in 20 years. What do you think? Are you a HEMA practitioner that's seen catch at an event? Have you tried it? Was it me teaching or was it someone else? Or are you a grappler that's never really come across HEMA before? Stick something in the comments, let me know. And if you're new to the channel, I hope this video has earned your subscription. And for those of you still here at the very end of the video, fight team!